They told me that princesses shouldn't fall in love with soldiers, that the blue blood of my lineage shouldn't mingle with the scent of gunpowder and earth. But from the moment my eyes met his in that crowded ballroom filled with diplomats and generals, I knew nothing else would make sense without that stormy gaze. My name is Rachel Smith, heir to the House of Avalon, a modern monarchy that poses for magazine covers more than it actually governs. But that night, as I endured tedious speeches and smiled out of obligation, he was there, Sergeant Luke Donahue, leaning discreetly near the entrance, as if he didn't belong in that world. And maybe he didn't. It was impossible to ignore him. His silence carried more presence than any speech in the room. We exchanged no more than 3 sentences, but it was enough. Days later, he was sent on a mission and vanished without a trace. Now, every time I try to sleep, it's not the media's flashbulbs that haunt me. It's the question no one dares ask aloud. Why did he disappear right after speaking to me? And why do I feel, even without proof, that it's all connected? To me, I've never liked grand events. The pomp, the tailored gowns, the fake pleasantries, and the empty conversations that repeat like a suffocating echo. But that night, everything felt even more unbearable. I'd had a headache since late afternoon. My dress was too tight at the waist, and my mother reminded me every 20 minutes that royalty also represents political stability, Rachel. Maintain your composure. I smiled out of duty, but inside I was screaming. My heels tapped impatiently on the cold marble floor as I hid behind a glass of champagne, praying for the night to end. That's when I saw him. I'm not sure if it was the subtle movement he made as he leaned against the wall or the way he observed everything around him like he didn't belong. I felt it before I saw it. A sudden shiver, a slice through the fog of boredom. I turned my eyes, and there he was. Impeccable uniform, broad shoulders, firm jaw, restrained expression. But the gaze, my God, the gaze. It wasn't the look of someone admiring a princess or assessing a room. It was the look of someone carrying war in their chest, yet still finding space for curiosity. The look of someone who feels, even while trying to hide it. Luke Donahue. I didn't know his name then, but I knew he wasn't just a decorative soldier assigned to security. There was something there, something hidden among the medals and the silence. When our eyes met, for a moment the whole world went quiet. It wasn't love at first sight. It was something more dangerous. Recognition, as if I'd known him in another life. He looked away first, but I couldn't. I stood there, frozen, watching, as he slipped into the shadows of a side hallway, as if it were all just a glitch in protocol. And maybe it was. Because that night, in that carefully rehearsed evening, my life began to veer off script. That's when the princess stumbled into war and never looked back. The next morning, I woke. Before my alarm, my body still rested between satin sheets, but my mind was far away, wandering through the details of the night before, reliving the moment those eyes cut through the room like a silent blade. I lay still, my face turned toward the window, watching. The sky began to lighten over the rooftops of Avalon, as a new restlessness spread inside me. I'd met hundreds of people in my life, diplomats, ambassadors, foreign royalty, artists, entrepreneurs, all carefully introduced with resumes, intentions, and rehearsed smiles. But this man, no one had mentioned his name. No aide had presented him. And yet, his presence had become the center of my world in the past 24 hours. I got up and headed straight to the private wing of the palace, where my older brother, August, was organizing military reports. He looked at me with that same suspicious air he's had since we were kids, as if it were his duty to protect me not just from the world but from myself. "You were acting strange last night," he commented, not lifting his eyes from the papers. I ignored him. Who was the man in uniform near the entrance? Tall, dark-haired, wearing a peacekeeping force armband. My brother paused. The pen in his hand hovered a second too long. Donahue. Luke Donahue, sergeant, one of the best in the field, assigned to extra security because of the defense minister. I nodded slowly, feigning disinterest, but my heart raced as if something forbidden had just been confirmed. August watched me in silence, and before he could say more, I added, "He seemed out of place. Different." My brother snorted. "Because he is. He's not one for palaces." Then, as if to end the matter, he went back to writing. But it was too late. The name was etched in my mind, and something inside me began to pulse stronger. The next few days, I tried to forget him, to convince myself that encounter was just a foolish spark in a routine of protocols. But every time I crossed the palace, halls, my eyes searched for that uniform without meaning to. When the week ended and I was told he'd left for a mission in the East, part of me withered. Only then did I realize I wanted to see him again, and I didn't know why. Then came the news, a brief, blunt, cold statement. The peacekeeping unit's helicopter had vanished. Unstable region, hostile conditions, no confirmation, no bodies. Just a name on the list of the missing, Sergeant Luke Donahue. Sitting in the glass-walled salon, my eyes fixed on my phone screen, I realized the world around me kept spinning. But I didn't. Because the pain I felt wasn't rational, it wasn't logical. It was visceral. Like I'd lost something I never truly had. And that's when everything changed. After the news spread, the palace sank into silence. Not a respectful silence, a heavy, dense one, as if everyone had been ordered not to mention Luke Donahue's name. It was as if he'd never existed. In the corridors, eyes darted away. In meetings, faces stayed stern and evasive. Even my father, always so formal, brushed it off when I casually asked if there were updates on the Eastern mission. Military, business, Rachel, not our concern. But I knew it was. I felt something was being hidden, and it gnawed at me. That's when I started breaking rules, small ones at first. I accessed restricted files in the palace's security hub using my full christened name, which practically gave me access to anything I wanted, even if no one admitted it openly. I searched lists of missing soldiers, analyzed intelligence reports, looked for any trace of his name in internal communications. Everything was fragmented, incomplete, as if someone had taken care to erase Luke's last steps. The only solid clue was the name of a local commander he'd reportedly contacted before vanishing. Major Ramsey, the same man once investigated for conducting illegal operations in neutral zones. My blood ran cold. Meanwhile, my public appearances grew more frequent, by the Crown's orders, of course. The press needed to see me smiling, wearing expensive dresses, cutting ribbons, and giving speeches about hope and democracy. But inside, I was at war. Every camera flash pulled me further from what I wanted. Answers. His face haunted my mind. Then, one humid October afternoon, I received an anonymous letter. Thick paper, no sender. Inside, a single sentence. He's alive, but not for long. My hands trembled. My heart nearly burst. I read those words so many times. I memorized. The ink smudges. It was a warning or a trap. But for me, a sliver of possibility, a breath of hope, was enough. I couldn't back down. That was the end of the perfect princess. From that moment, I'd do whatever it took to uncover the truth, even if it meant betraying my own blood. I had no idea where to start, but I knew I couldn't stay still. I was raised in a world where everything is decided by councils, planners, official statements. Nothing happens without approval, without protocol. Even grief has to be scheduled. But that anonymous letter had torn through the rules with the same coldness as someone ripping the skin off a secret. If Luke was alive and in danger, every second mattered. While security officials pretended to investigate, I started asking questions myself. I called journalists, old friends from military academies, used my name, my image, my influence. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. At times, I tasted the bitter sting of humiliation, like when a commander laughed in my face and said, "Princesses should worry about dresses, not military operations." But I didn't stop. The more I pushed, the more the truth seemed to slip through the edges. And amidst all the locked doors, one opened unexpectedly. An ambassador's assistant, a young woman, quiet, eyes always down, pulled me aside after an event. She handed me a USB drive without a word, only whispering that I should see it before it disappears too. That night was the first time I disobeyed direct security orders. I locked my bedroom door, disconnected the Wi-Fi, turned off my phone, and plugged the drive into an old computer in the palace's library, far from digital eyes. There, among poorly organized folders and short videos, I found something that stole my breath. Blurry footage, a conflict zone, soldiers running, a wrecked helicopter, a man being dragged by armed civilians, his face half covered in blood and dust. But the eyes, even pixelated, even in motion, I knew those eyes. It was him, Luke, alive, wounded but alive. For a moment I wanted to cry, not from sadness but from rage, because this proved someone knew. Someone had hidden it. Worse, they were letting everyone believe he was dead. The question burning me now was, why? Why cover up a missing soldier? Why him? What did he see? What did he know? What were they trying to bury with his name? From that moment I realized I could no longer trust anyone in the system that shaped me. For the first time, I felt my crown wasn't a symbol of power, it was a collar. To save Luke, I'd have to become someone the world never imagined I could be. I started moving in the shadows of my own palace. I walked like an intruder in the place where I was born. I learned to listen more than speak, to watch more than be watched. My public appearances dwindled, and when aides questioned it, I claimed emotional exhaustion from the recent tragedy. No one dared challenge a princess supposedly in mourning. Meanwhile, my days filled with covert calls, coded notes, and meetings disguised as social causes that didn't exist. All to trace Luke, to unravel what lay behind his disappearance and that cursed message still burning in my purse. He's alive, but not for long. In one of my boldest moves, I tracked down a retired army officer, a bitter drunk forgotten in a small house on the capital's outskirts. I brought groceries, medicine, and a bottle of his favorite whiskey. Only after his third glass, when his tongue loosened, did I hear what no one else would tell me. Luke had been part of a covert mission, not officially approved, involving supply, drops, and negotiations with paramilitary leaders. But something went wrong. A local leader was executed without orders, and Luke was the only one to object. He was labeled insubordinate in internal reports, a detail buried under layers of secrecy. That explained it all. He didn't vanish. He was silenced, or worse, handed over. The revelation hit like a dagger. I wanted to scream, to expose it all, to tear down every glass wall in that hypocritical palace. But I held back. I understood that showing my anger would only make it easier to sideline me. I needed time. Time to piece together the puzzle, to figure out who authorized it and why Luke posed such a threat. But what hurt most was knowing that somewhere out there, he was suffering, maybe wounded, maybe captive, maybe forced to carry truths no one wanted exposed. That's when things escalated. I started being watched. My computer crashed for no reason. My phone rang with silent calls in the dead of night. One evening, returning to my quarters, I found the lock faintly scratched. Small, signs almost invisible, but they screamed at me. They knew I knew, and time, once my ally, was turning against me. The earth here smells of dried blood. Everything is dust, smoke, and broken promises. No flags, no uniforms, just too many armed men and too few laws. Infiltrating this place was easier than admitting to myself what I'm doing. I'm no longer Rachel Smitch, heir to Avalon. Here, I'm just a woman with war in her eyes and steady steps. I brought only what I needed, a name, a photo, and a hope I can barely contain. My body trembles quietly at every corner, but my eyes, they've learned not to look away. The first days were silent. Nothing came easily. People stared like they knew I didn't belong, and they were right. But I saw something else in some faces. Fear. Fear of the name I carried on my lips. Fear of the man I was searching for. Then a boy, no older than 10, pointed to a tin shack on the outskirts of the main village and said, "The foreigner with sad eyes lives there." Don't talk loud. They hear everything. My knees nearly buckled. Crossing those yards felt like walking on invisible shards. Each step carried the weight of what I might or might not find. When I knocked and saw a thin shadow move inside, I knew there was no turning back. He was alive, but he wasn't the same. The man who opened the door had Luke's body, Luke's eyes, but a face redrawn by suffering. Thinner, paler, with purple bruises on his arms and a fresh scar across his cheek. For a second, he didn't recognize me. He stood there staring as if distinguishing between hallucination and reality. Then he whispered my name, and something inside me broke. I cried, not like a princess, but like someone who'd carried too much pain for too long. He pulled me inside without a word, and we sat on the dirt floor side by side, like two survivors unsure of what to say. In the days that followed, I heard it all. The ambush, the betrayal, months in captivity, the deal the government pretended not to see, silence as currency. And more than anything, I heard something no one else had dared tell me, that my presence in that ballroom that night was the only good thing he'd clung to during captivity. That while he was beaten, humiliated and forgotten, he held on to the memory of my gaze, not because I was the princess, but because for a moment someone had seen him as a man, not a soldier. I wanted to bring him back, to show the world what they'd done to him. But he refused. He said exposing it now would risk more lives, that the names behind the operation were still in power, that he needed more time. And I understood. Because sometimes surviving is the first act of justice. We parted at dawn. A light kiss, no promises, but something stronger than words. A pact. He stayed. I returned, with a new identity, a new gaze. Now every speech I give, every smile I offer, every princess gesture carries the venom of hidden truths. I'm the heir to the throne, but I'm also the keeper of a secret that could destroy everything. And when the time comes, it will. I'll be the one to tell the world what they did to Luke Donahue. Because he gave me courage, and I gave him the memory that love, when true, doesn't need thrones to exist. It just needs to endure. Years have passed, but the weight of that story never left my shoulders. I'm still called a princess. I still smile at events and pose for photos beside leaders who pretend not to know what's hidden beneath their own palaces. But nothing in me is the same. Today, every choice is calculated, every step part of something bigger. I've become what I never planned to be, a silent threat. Not with swords or armies, but with the most dangerous weapon someone like me could wield, the truth. Luke lives hidden in a corner of the world few dare to tread. He stays silent not out of fear, but strategy. He rebuilds himself bit by bit, far from the lights and promises that never held. We still exchange letters, notes tucked inside books that travel unlikely routes. Sometimes he writes just one line. I still remember your gaze. And that's enough. For me, still here, waiting for the moment the world is ready to know who he was and what they did to him. Some call it cowardice, others patience. I call it a cold war, fought with smiles and silences, won not by force, but by persistence. I don't expect redemption. I don't seek revenge. I just want justice. And I know it will come, even if in slow steps, even under the weight of crowns and veiled pacts. The day will come, and when it does, it won't just be Luke Donohue's name remembered. It'll be the name of a princess who dared to leave the palace.